5th program in the 2019 CHUS Forum and Lecture Series. The adventure starts here. Actually, it can start at the Museum of Redfish Center as well, too. This series is sponsored by the Sawtooth Interpretive and Historical Association. And for those of you that I don't know, I'm Paul Hill. I have been a long-time member of the board of CHUS, as we call it, SIHA. I could say an old member, but that's so obvious, I'll just say long-term. Let me begin by thanking our primary sponsors for the Forum and Lecture Series this year. They include Redfish Lake Lodge, the wonderful Crouch and Clay families that do so much for our community, and the McNichol family, who is helping sponsor the series this summer in honor of Roland McNichol, the patriarch who passed away last year. He was an avid supporter of this, as well as education about the Sawtooth and the Sawtooth Valley. And he and his wife, Sally, have had a home here for over 40 years and raised 4 generations, the kind of commitment to the valley that we love to see. For those of you who aren't familiar with CHUS, we're a member-based, not-for-profit 501c3 organization. And our mission is very simple. It's to protect and enhance the natural and cultural history of Idaho's Sawtooth Salmon River country through preservation and education. And the Forum and Lecture Series, I think we're in about our 10th year now, is one example of the education that we do, but the preservation includes the Stanley Museum Complex. Any of you who haven't seen it, about a mile down Route 75, please go visit it. It's a wonderful historic area. Our programs, CHUS programs, are funded by book and map sales at our sales outlets, by donations from folks like you, by grants, and by memberships. And we hope, if you like the programs, if you like what you hear tonight, if you think we're doing a worthwhile job, you'll support us by either making a donation or becoming a member. Membership forms are in the little brochure here, which was given to you when you came in. There's also a dip jar there for you who are technologically advanced, where you can put your card in and it'll charge you $5, or you can just put in good old cash. But in any event, I think it's something that's important for us to be able to keep these programs going. And one of the best things you can do is become a member. Memberships start at $50, and it's a great deal. How many people here are members? Could you read? We love to see that. Well, anybody who didn't raise your hands, take an opportunity as you go out the door to pick up a little envelope and become a member. I think you'll really enjoy it. We also have a raffle this year, as we do often. It's an adventure pack. It's nice bright red, so those of us who get lost in the wilderness are easy to find. But it comes along with a lot of other things, including, for those scientifically inclined, a wonderful water purifier kit, some terrific trekking poles, telescoping trekking poles, a solar light, and a whole lot more that can all go to your hiking activities. It retails for over $500. Tickets for the raffle, which will be limited in numbers sold, are only $5 a ticket, or 5 for $20. So again, you can pick up tickets at the table right by the door there. But the drawing will be held at the Salmon Festival, August 31. Hope a lot of you will be back for that. There's also a great program by CHUS that Friday night, and you do not have to be present to win. So buy some tickets and enjoy yourself with that. And finally, we'd also like to invite you to become part of our history by purchasing a brick for the pathway into the museum about a mile down Highway 75 here. That's a project that is ongoing, which is restoring that museum complex, which was the first ranger station here in the Sawtooth Valley, as well as some other important buildings, one of the only private ice houses in Custer County, and one of the few in the state of Idaho that's been completely redone with exhibits. So you can help us complete that project, which involves quite a bit of money, by purchasing a brick. They're all different sizes, and you become immortalized in the pathway to our museum. Brochures regarding that are available again on the table in front. And finally, I wanted to remind everybody on Sunday, is it Saturday or Sunday? Tomorrow. Tomorrow is Smokey the Bear's 75th birthday. So if you go out to Redfish Center between 1 and 3 p.m., there'll be cake and parties, and I think maybe Smokey will show up in person So if you got a little time in the afternoon, go out and enjoy yourselves and have a good time. The subject of tonight's lecture is the Sawtooth wolf pack. I'm curious how many people in the audience know the story of the Sawtooth wolf pack? Oh, about half, maybe a little more. Well, for those of you who know, I know you're going to enjoy the talk by Jim and Jamie, but beyond that, for those of you who don't know about it, you're in for a real treat because it was a somewhat unique experiment at the time, and I think they'll tell you about it. And with that, I'd like to introduce Megan Nelson, who's our historic specialist at the museum down the road, to introduce the Dutchers.
Hello, thank you all for coming to our 5th lecture of our 2019 season. The 2019 lecture series will focus on the adventures, stories, and experiences we can all have here while we're in the Sawtooths. During the 1990s, Jim and Jamie Dutcher lived in a tented camp in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho, where they intimately observed the social hierarchy of the now famous Sawtooth Pack. In 2005, moved by the plight of the wolves, the Dutchers put down their filmmaking equipment and founded the nonprofit organization Living with Wolves, seeking to reestablish the wolf in its rightful place in the American West. Since then, they have presented trusted, factual information through social media, books, and educator guides for schools, films, and museum exhibits to more than 30 million people worldwide. Please welcome Jim and Jamie Dutcher with the Sawtooth Wolf Pack.
Thank you. We're really thrilled to be here. We've really come full circle. It's taken us 20-some years, but from when the project was finished and coming back here, it's really nice to be presenting. I'd like to thank Paul and Ann Hill of the Sawtooth Society and Sarah, who's been a big help putting this together. It's really terrific. And just want to acknowledge Garrick Dutcher and Norma Douglas, who work with us at Living with Wolves. And also, just a big shout out to Gary Gadwalk, who's in the back. Gary is a terrific guy, and he has been a real supporter and friend since the beginning of the project, and has just been tremendous for us. And thank you, Gary, for everything.
Hello, everybody. It's really a thrill, a treat to be back here where it all began, where the project began. And you, as an audience, you know what it's like to live in the wild, to live in the mountains, to deal with the cold. And you get it, and you probably have stories about wolves and of your own. And so I appreciate being here, and I just wanted to thank you. The wisdom of wolves.
Can we get the lights?
Yeah.
Thanks.
They have decided that this is the time. The sun has disappeared behind the mountains, leaving just a small collection of clouds, stealing light from a short February day. In the east, a deep blue creeps in, too early yet for stars. The night is falling still and bitterly cold. But they don't mind. They are creatures of the cold. They appear in near silence. One emerges from the shadows of the spruce forest, two from the tangle of bare willows. For this occasion, they all want to be together. In the forest clearing, 7 now circle and greet each other. There is no audible call to assemble, no visible trigger that sparked this gathering. They have their reasons. They exchange hellos, touch noses, press shoulder to shoulder, then move apart. Their movements betray anticipation, something between agitation and joy. In the apparent chaos of the assembly, there is a subtle order. One stands taller and more still than the rest, like a hub in the center of a wheel. He's not the focus of the action, but perhaps the core, confident, alert, solid. Each individual makes a point of greeting him first, though the level of submission varies from individual to individual. One approaches in a relaxed and respectful manner, another in a bow so deep he's almost crawling. Here in the clearing, personalities are laid bare as their playing reinforces their family bonds. These are individuals, each with his or her way of being or interacting with each other. Their displays of boldness, of shyness, of aggression, of playfulness, and even tenderness. All the while they've been speaking to each other, sharing something between them in voices rich with excitement. Then suddenly, their leader's voice soars above the chatter. His call rises quickly, slowly falling in tone, tapering off where it began. For the others, it's a cue to begin. Each singer adds its own voice to the chorus, but sings a song all its own. The sound is both harmonious and haunting. It fills the valley below, echoes off the mountain cliffs, and floats back in a double loop. With faces turned to the sky, they sing. They are a family, a tribe, a fierce confederacy. They're also an assembly of individual personalities, private desires and goals, and in their lives largely unknown. They are a wolf pack, howling. In Alaska and Alberta, in Wisconsin and Wyoming, in Germany, Spain, Russia, and even in the Middle East, anywhere on earth where Canis lupus lives, this scene is surely repeated. Sometimes we hear it, but rarely do we observe it. But this particular time, it's a bit different. The setting is certainly prime wolf habitat, and the wolves present have gathered for their spirited pack rally for reasons known only to them. However, they're not completely alone. From the darkness of a bordering forest, a pair of human observers crouch at a discreet distance, watching, recording in awe, the spectacle they've been privileged to witness.
Back then, we were known as Dutcher Film Productions, Jim on camera and me recording sound, documenting events that hadn't occurred here for the past 50 years. We call them the Sawtooth Pack, after the majestic Sawtooth Mountains that rose behind their riparian home on the edge of Idaho wilderness. For 6 years, they allowed us to share their lives. We came to know them both as individuals and as integral parts of the pack. We were passive observers in their lives and honored to have their trust. The Sawtooth wolves weren't exactly wild, but then again, they couldn't have been. At the time, there were virtually no wild wolves in Idaho, or for that matter, throughout the American West. We knew, however, that plans were underway to return gray wolves to a portion of their former range, and it seemed the right time to produce a film about them. Our goal wasn't to document every aspect of wolf behavior. It was to show the intimate lives and relationships within a pack. In 2 films, Wolf: Return of a Legend and Wolves at Our Door, the Sawtooth Pack helped reintroduce people to wolves just as their wild cousins were being reintroduced onto American soil. In 1995, the U.S. government captured 66 wolves in Canada and released them into Yellowstone National Park in central Idaho. As the wolves' return to the Rocky Mountains progressed on schedule, knowledge and understanding about them lagged far behind. public perception was still based more on centuries-old mythology than on any real observation. For some, wolves were demons to be feared and hated. Vermin whose eradication had been justified. To others, they were in the spiritual embodiment of America's lost connection with nature, a pure and flawless creature, more symbol than substance. But for us, living with them, it didn't take long to become captivated by them for altogether different reasons. The more we observed, filmed, and recorded their sounds, the less we saw the mythical beast of our dreams and nightmares. What we found instead was something a lot more familiar. They were a lot like us.
We called it Wolf Camp, a deceptively simple name for a patch of tents, platform, and fencing that we had constructed. Wolf Camp was a forever evolving project, and our resources were decidedly limited. Heat came from a wood stove, shower water from a nearby creek or melted snow, and light and cooking flame came from candles, oil, and propane. Wolf Camp was more than a place. It was the embodiment of all inspiration, trial and error, and years of hard work. It was the foundation of an entirely new way we were telling the world about wolves. The project grew out of an idea: find a way to share the hidden life of an animal that was so scarce and elusive that it had become virtually unknown. The project was to span a few years and finish in a documentary film. However, it evolved into something far bigger than we could ever imagine.
By 12 weeks, the pups at the Dutcher Wolf Camp display distinct personalities. One named Lakota is very shy, while his look-alike brother, Kamats, is the most alert and curious of the litter. It seems to Jim that little Kamats has the confidence and spirit of a natural leader. Another winter descends, imposing bitter cold. The deep snow is an obstacle to filmmakers, but a big white playground to wolves wearing thick new coats. Though Kamats the Alpha appears to play aggressively, when he inadvertently knocks a yearling over, he returns as if to apologize. To Jim, it seemed that the confidence Kamats possessed in youth is blossoming into a calm benevolence. He is more alert than the others, with a look that seems to convey the intelligence and concern of a leader.
We recognize the face, a broad mask that tapers gracefully into a long muzzle. We've looked into the eyes, bright with curiosity. We understand the messages conveyed through posture, the alertness seen in expression, the playfulness of a bow, the confidence or fear betrayed by an animated tail. We can be forgiven for thinking we already know the wolf, for in many ways, we already do. It's now understood that all domestic dogs are the descendants of wolves. And there's evidence that domestication occurred more than 15,000 years ago, and possibly over 30,000. Yet wherever domestication occurred, our special relationship with wolves certainly began much earlier. Many hypotheses suggest that ancient humans and wolves lived in close proximity. Humans and wolves were, and still are, two of the most geographically widespread mammals on Earth. As our ancestors were spreading across the globe, wolves were there. As two of the few animals that live in extended family groups where cooperation is essential, It's not surprising that we became kindred spirits. In the lives of wolves, we see reflections of things that we have come to value in ourselves. They care for their pups with a familiar devotion and share our reflexive instinct to care for youngsters, related or not. They hold a place in society for their elders. They push the boundaries and explore, then return to visit their families. They care what happens to one another, and they miss each other when they're separated. And they grieve when one among them dies. They do all this with a clarity of purpose that we as humans often struggle to achieve. The traits that wolves passed on to dogs served us well as we became shepherds and farmers. We capitalized on the wolf's territorialism to create a dog that steadfastly guarded our flocks and property. We put the wolf's superior sense of smell and knack for locating prey to use as trackers and retrievers on our own hunts. We transformed the wolf's skill as harassing and maneuvering big grazing animals into a herding instinct, helping us move our livestock from place to place. The wolf also passed along to dogs its most indispensable qualities: devotion to its pack, sociability, and a capacity for learning, communication, and expression. In turning the wolf into the dog, we created the ultimate companion, a faithful friend that can understand our intentions perhaps better than some of our fellow humans can. Both wolves and humans brought unique and complementary talents to a relationship that was based on mutual respect. And several scholars agree that humans more than likely learned to hunt by watching wolves. The relationship between dogs and humans has been so mutually beneficial and enduring that it's clear that we've influenced each other's evolution. Knowing all that the wolf bequeathed to our beloved dogs, how strange it is that we often reserve for wolves a hatred that we hold for no other animal. We brought our domestic dogs along with us into our pastures, cities, and homes. Wolves are the dogs that stayed behind, favoring their wild ways. Perhaps we can't forgive them for that. The calm center of the Sawtooth pack was a benevolent alpha male that we called Kamats, native Blackfoot language meaning freedom. He was a strong and confident wolf, but not above playing with his packmates and indulging in endless curiosity. His mate was a high-strung dark female named Shamook. On the opposite end of the pack hierarchy was Kamats's littermate, a big gray male that we called Lakota. But despite his size, Lakota was timid and shy, and for many years he was subjected to the unamiable position of Omega, the lowest member of the pack, enduring aggression from the others. 5 other wolves, 4 males and 1 female, made up the pack's middle ranks. And in 1996, Shamook gave birth to 3 pups, totaling 11 wolves.
During our time living with the Sawtooth pack, we feel that our most significant observations was to witness how wolves care for one another. An example of this behavior revealed itself in the very first year of the project with a dark female Omega wolf that we had named Mataki. Mataki is the word for shadow in the Blackfoot language. And like all Omega wolves, she was the focus of pack aggression, forced to eat last, and often picked upon. As a result of her Omega status, Mataki would often go off and be alone in a remote area of the territory. And it was during a time like this that a mountain lion climbed over the fence and killed Mataki. Now, the story I'd like to share with you is not how Mataki died, but rather how the pack reacted to her death. For the remainder of that spring and well into the following summer, their behavior changed, and they appeared suppressed. Hanging their heads, they drifted about their home in a listless manner. Now, Jamie and I have noticed that Omega wolves instigate play in an effort to diffuse pack tension. Mataki was good at this, and when she died, the other wolves lost the spirit to play. Another indication of their changed behavior was the way they howled. Howling is an exciting time for wolves. They rally together to celebrate the solidarity of their family. Singing together as a group, the howl is punctuated with lively yips and whines. After Mataki died, their howling changed for a time. No longer gathering together, they would howl separately and with very little energy. Their vocalizations had a mournful, searching quality to them, as if they expected Mataki to return. These changed behaviors continued for well over 6 weeks.
Wolves can be described in many ways, but above all, they're social. They need each other. As hunters, as parents, as keepers of a home territory, wolves succeed as part of a group. They've evolved to live and function within a society. They communicate, they cooperate, they teach their young, they share the duties of day-to-day life. In our years observing and filming the Sawtooth pack, we have come to see the wolves as deeply emotional individuals who care about what happens to themselves and their family members. Like many other animals, they're emotionally intelligent beings. A wolf pack knows who he is, a wolf knows who he is and has a concept of how his actions are perceived by others. He's capable of empathy, compassion, encouragement, and apology. As humans, we're empathetic creatures too. So many times watching the Sawtooth pack, we were struck by the realization that we weren't just sharing the wolves' experiences, we were sharing their feelings. Our joy at the first snow of the season was mirrored by the way they raced about playing tag, rolling about in the fresh powder. When Shamook gave birth to pups in a den she had dug under a fallen tree, we were over the moon. We couldn't wait to see them. As we watched the pack gather around the den entrance, pacing and whining with excitement, we could see they had the same feelings we did. When a member of the pack was killed by a mountain lion, the change in their behavior was undeniable, and we felt their grief.
Some winters are cold, but some are brutal. The Dutchers are consumed by daily chores and by life with the wolves. Half a decade will pass as a blur of seasons. Winter cold seems to melt suddenly into summer heat. Summer is quickly winter again. But there is music accompanying the passage of time, an ancient music of the wild. Sound recordist for the films, Jamie spends her spare time accumulating an archive of the pack's howls. She finds that she can identify individual wolves by their unique inflections.
Surprisingly, Lakota had the most beautiful howl. Eyes shut and head thrown back, he would just pour his heart out, rich, mournful, lonely, and sad. I felt as if I were listening to him sing the blues, giving voice to the despair of an Omega.
Jamie believes that wolves are so intelligent that they can communicate in complicated ways through their howls and body postures, ways we don't yet understand.
Each was an individual in personality and voice, but needed to feel forever linked with his companions in the pack. They constantly rubbed and licked one another as if to reassure themselves of this closeness. Even competitive wrestling was a way of reinforcing that each had a place in the pack structure, that they were a united family.
It is at last clear to Jim and Jamie that the project is succeeding. The pack is now a cohesive family. Most importantly, the wolves trust their human friends.
We had names for each, but they didn't know that. We didn't approach the pack. The wolves came to us only if they chose to. It made their friendship all the more rewarding. Kamatz was in charge, but he could be just as playful as the others. I'd come to admire him immensely after years of watching him lead. To be accepted by him, to be worthy of his attention, and maybe even affection, was an overwhelming honor.
Early on, the Dutchers learned that the wolves rarely sleep through the night. To capture the full range of pack vocalizations, Jamie sets up an outside microphone wired to sound gear in her bed. Even when howling breaks out in the middle of the night, she's ready to record. Wolves howl at any time, day or night, sometimes in response to a distant sound, sometimes to check on one another. Jamie believes wolves howl for more reasons than we can know. Often the whole pack rallies together and starts a game of tag, playing in the dark, unmindful of the bone-chilling cold.
Their nightly singing became as soothing as rainfall on a window, an ancient sound of the earth, of life itself. The singing would end, and the pack would settle down, leaving the world silent again. I would fall asleep, wanting this magical life to go on forever. Wolves, like those in Yellowstone National Park, are regulated to small islands of protected land, often surrounded by cattle country and many unfriendly humans. A wolf's natural urge to wander can lead it onto dangerous ground in very short order. And such was the fate of Yellowstone wolf number 253. Although he had an official identification number, everyone knew him as either Limpy or Hoppy. His three-legged gait made him one of Yellowstone's most easily recognizable wolves. By the time wolf spotters noticed him as a juvenile, he had already sustained the injury that had left him partially crippled. Limpy was a young member of the famous Druid Peak Pack, born in 2000. Observers admired his tenacity on the hunt, keeping up with his parents and helping to take down elk without his right front leg ever touching the ground. In 2002, young Limpy was struck with wanderlust. And we find it really remarkable that of all the Yellowstone wolves, it was the one with the hobbled foreleg that decided to go on a long trek, limping 200 miles through western Wyoming, all the way to Morgan, Utah. Limpy had an indomitable spirit that yearned to seek out the unknown. And as one reporter wrote, his heart seemed stronger than his legs. Limpy may have also been searching in vain for a female wolf, but it would have been uncharacteristic for a wolf to turn his back on the highest population of available females in the country to look for a wolf where no traces of his kind remained. It really appeared that he was gripped with a desire to explore. In any case, his stint as the first wolf in Utah in 70 years was short-lived. Of all things, one of his good legs found its way into a coyote trap. U.S. Fish and Wildlife officials collected him and released him on the northern edge of Grand Teton National Park. But instead of striking out on his own again, Limpy, now operating on 2.5 legs, crossed the territories of several hostile wolf packs and returned to his own old home and birth pack. Back among the Druids of northern Yellowstone, he settled into the rank of beta wolf. Together, he and the famous alpha pair, 21 and 42, became known as the Druids' Big Three, largely responsible for the pack's incredible success. The drive for wolves to stay with their family, their pack, is a strong one. In most wolves, it's stronger than the urge to break off alone. But Limpy wasn't like most wolves. There's no exact count, but over his lifetime, he must have covered well over 1,000 miles. And even as he entered into his 8th year, he was given to wander. But in the end, that spirit of exploration proved fatal. In 2008, Limpy left his family and the protection of Yellowstone once more. He headed south into Sublette County, Wyoming, where the stores sell t-shirts depicting a wolf in crosshairs with the slogan, "Smoke a pack a day." For his entire life, Limpy had been a stalwart deer and elk hunter. No matter how deep in cattle country he roamed, and despite an injury that could drive him towards easy prey, he never attacked livestock. From a ranching standpoint, Limpy was a model wolf. But near the town of Daniel, someone shot him all the same. Opponents of wolf recovery insistently stoke the fears over the animal's insatiable hunger for cattle and sheep. The truth is, fewer livestock animals die as a result of wolf predation than by storms, injury, disease, even attacks by other predators. But statistics don't seem to matter to those who cling to the old 19th century mindset that the only good wolf is a dead wolf. Official wolf culling is just the tip of the iceberg. We kill wolves recreationally, regardless of their impact on livestock. We shoot and trap entire packs that choose to live in wilderness, far away from people and ranches. And if wolves can't live in wilderness, where can they live? In Wyoming, people believe in the traditional values of the American West: bravery, independence, perseverance, and self-reliance. Yet I doubt the hunter that shot Limpy, wolf number 253M, ever took a second to pause and realize that the creature he was about to kill was the embodiment of all the qualities he admired: an adventurous spirit, full of courage and curiosity. If he had, would he have pulled the trigger?
The myth of the darker side of wolves has often appeared in folklore and fable, and unfortunately in modern literature and films. Misunderstanding breeds fear, and fear can breed hatred. The truth is, wolves are afraid of people and they try to avoid them. Along with all wild animals such as moose, bears, cougars, and elk, wolves could be dangerous, but these events are exceedingly rare. For example, over the past 100 years, there have been only 2 possible cases where a wolf attacked and killed a human being in North America. To put this in perspective, over the past 12 years, bears have killed 35 people, and cougars have killed over 9 since 1990. Wolves are not a serious threat to humans.
The more time we spent with the wolves of the Sawtooth Pack, we realized how caring and family-oriented they were. In the pack, 2 wolves were especially close. Motsi, the beta wolf on the left, and Lakota, the omega, often hung out together apart from the rest of the pack. Motsi genuinely seemed to enjoy Lakota's company, and Lakota, normally shunned or picked upon by the rest of the pack, appeared grateful to have Motsi as a friend. Lakota, shown here in the center, receives a reassuring glance from Motsi, and at times, Motsi would actually use his size and status to prevent conflicts. And often, Lakota would look to Motsi to make sure things didn't get too out of hand. Occasionally, though, the pack would become aggressive with the omega, and these assaults on Lakota would concern the beta wolf. And frequently, Motsi would actually body check the aggressors out of the way to stop the fighting. In this case, however, Lakota sank to the ground and worm crawled his way out of the frenzy. With Motsi, Lakota was free to do things he wouldn't dare do around the other wolves. He never would have jumped on a mid-ranking wolf's back to instigate play. No wolf in the pack would have stood for that sort of audacity from an omega. Motsi, on the other hand, let it pass. Not only did these 2 wolves sleep side by side, but when Motsi went exploring, Lakota often joined him. One of the happiest observations that we experienced in all our time with the pack was the sight of these 2 wolves frolicking together and that look of pure joy on the face of Lakota, freed for a moment from all his burdens.
Lakota faces the unyielding rule of his own brother, the Alpha. Kamats can be benevolent, but he is always supreme. His command over a carcass is unyielding. He alone decides who will eat when, and Lakota, by rank, must eat last. Lakota tries to approach the carcass unnoticed before his turn. But Kamats must reinforce the rules of status, which ensure pack stability. He refuses to let his omega brother near the food. His attack is meant only as a warning. An alpha rarely harms a pack member. Mid-ranking wolves constantly seek dominance over one another. Is the arbiter of all disputes, putting each in his place. Lakota takes a new tack, hoping to make himself so insignificant that no one will notice him eating. He prostrates himself before Kamas, whose attention wanders. Perhaps Lakota can snatch a quick bite before the others see. It doesn't work. For weeks, Jamie watches Lakota play his Omega role. She notices something not readily apparent, because Lakota often remains so low to the ground. The ever-submissive Lakota is actually bigger than his brother Kamas, the Alpha. Can a wolf born with such a yielding personality ever hope to escape being the Omega? The mysteries are only beginning.
I wanted to be an impartial observer, but Lakota the Omega touched my heart. Always trying to please his brother the Alpha, hunched over, tail tucked in submission. I began spending a lot of time documenting Lakota. I noticed that although the pack always picked on him, they clearly cared about him, especially Mopsy, who would stand by, making sure Lakota was okay. I realized there's a lot going on in the inner lives of wolves.
I kept trying to film Jamie and Lakota together. But every time I would turn the camera on, Lakota would become nervous and move away.
Jim experiments in an effort to make Lakota more comfortable. He replaces the movie camera with a smaller still camera and sets up further away, hoping to capture the growing bond between the Omega and Jamie.
Lakota took a big risk spending time with me. If the pack had caught him getting special attention, they would have attacked him. But sometimes we would just sit together. Once he took his paw, and he gently placed it on my shoulder, and gazed at me with those wise amber eyes of his. We sat that way for quite a while. From that moment, I was captivated by him, and I knew he would forever hold a special place in my heart.
Wolves are not only social animals, living together as families, they are also a keystone species in that they help manage and bring stability to ecosystems. In the 1920s and 30s, wolves were nearly eradicated from the American West. And then realizing that the wolf was nearly extinct in this area and that ecosystems were falling out of balance, the U.S. government captured wolves in Canada and reintroduced them to Yellowstone National Park in central Idaho in the 1990s. Since reintroduction, there have been many improvements to ecosystems reported by various scientific studies. We've learned a lot from the return of the wolf. For example, while the wolves were absent for those 70 years or so, elk, their primary source of prey, would just linger in the riparian areas along the rivers and streams, browsing on and suppressing the new growth of willow, aspen, and cottonwood trees. Today, the fear of wolves has redistributed the elk. They are now much more alert and prefer higher ground than other places where they feel safe from wolves. Meanwhile, back along the rivers and streams in many places, since the elk have moved on, the vegetation has bounced back. Until recently, because the elk would eat all the young saplings, the only cottonwood trees in the entire park were no younger than 70 years of age. Trees now stabilize the banks of streams and provide shade, which lowers the water temperature making the habitat better for trout, resulting in more and bigger fish. The remains of a kill left behind by wolves provides critically needed nourishment for other animals, scavengers such as grizzly bears, wolverines, black bears, golden and bald eagles, just to name a very few. In Yellowstone, the overpopulation of coyotes has now fallen. The wolves either killed them or chased them away. This has increased the number of rodents, rabbits, hares, pocket gophers, field mice, animals that provide food for struggling birds of prey. Owls, hawks, and eagles are doing much better. Along with the drop in the coyote population has also benefited pronghorn antelope. You see, coyotes specialize in eating young newborn antelope fawns and their mothers that try to protect their offspring. Wolves do not. They go after the larger, slow-moving elk. Along with all these ecological and environmental factors, having wolves back in Yellowstone draws 150,000 visitors a year. People that come to the park just to see wolves. That's an extra $35 million added annually to the local economy.
As we began our work with the Sawtooth Pack in the 1990s, we had the opportunity to spend time with wolf biologist Dr. Gordon Haber in Denali National Park. At the time, he was conducting the longest continuous study of wolves in the world, begun in 1939 by Adolf Murie. When Gordon died in 2009, we lost a meticulous scientist and an outspoken wolf advocate. Few human beings have logged more hours observing wolves than Gordon. He was a rigorous scientist, as evidenced by his notebooks filled with minute-by-minute observations. Yet he wasn't afraid to step beyond pure science and acknowledge that wolves resonate in the human psyche in a way few other animals do. Seeing just how much the Sawtooth Pack played, we wondered about their wild cousins. Were wolves in the wild who were more burdened by survival issues, such as being hunted or avoiding rival packs, still likely to play? Gordon provided the answer. After spending a lifetime observing wolves in Alaska, he told us, if a half hour passes without at least some play, that's a very unusual half hour in the daily routine of a wolf family. It isn't coincidental that wolves are at the same time probably the most playful, as well as the most socially cooperative of non-human animals. Jim and I both feel that Haber was ahead of his time in how he understood the social order of a wolf pack. Where other biologists saw a family group of hunters, Gordon saw a shared culture, the passing of information over generations. He saw a true society in which play is the glue that holds it together.
No matter how severe the weather becomes, Jim and Jamie are always amazed to find the pack completely unaffected. Sometimes the wolves curl up and sleep through the worst storms. They never seek shelter in a den or under trees. They seem a perfect animal for winter. Not only are they blasé about the cold, they greet fresh snow as if it's a gift from heaven, some new surprise that always puts them in a mood to play. Two of the most fun-loving are the young female Wyakin and her black sister Shimuk, once shy, but increasingly rambunctious and assertive. The Dutchers believe that Kamats will soon pick one to be his mate, to become the alpha female and the mother of the pack's first litter. Jim and Jamie still feel Shimuk might become an omega, like for Lakota. But they know better than to predict wolf behavior. In fact, the caretaker Mutzi has begun to discipline Shamook's siblings, enabling Shamook to begin moving up in rank. So far, Kamat seems more interested in snow than in choosing a mate. Usually, only two in a wolf pack will mate, the alpha male and female. Yet all sense that something important is about to happen. There's an electricity in the air. It may be the dead of winter, but the heat of the mating season approaches. As January turns to February, Jamie notices a distinct change in Shamook. She grows even more assertive and less timid. Everyone is on edge. Only the alphas mate, but all the wolves experience the urge to reproduce. The pack remains friendly to them, but Jim and Jamie sense the mood turning more serious, as if the wolves know a turning point is coming. Will Kamats choose the watchful Shamook, or the female the Dutchers believe better suited, Wyakin, who is larger and livelier? One day it is obvious to Jamie, from the intensity of the pack and their vocalizations, that the females have gone into heat. The situation is not lost on Kamats. Suddenly, Kamats makes his choice clear. It is little Shamook, to the Dutcher's surprise, and perhaps to hers as well. From that moment on, Shamook's life and that of the entire pack changes dramatically. The shy female expected to become an omega has risen instead to the role of alpha female, the mate of the leader. Since wolves usually pair for life, Shamook will reign supreme over the other females in the pack, effectively becoming the queen mother of the family.
If her story had unfolded in the fairy tale world, little Shamook would be Cinderella. Wyakin had seemed the likely princess. Now she could only watch.
And so the wait begins, to see if the tender rituals of courtship will lead to the first pups produced by the Sawtooth pack itself. In the third week of April, in a hidden forest den, a litter of pups is born. Shamook, the new mother, feeds them for nearly a month in seclusion, barring even the pack from visiting the den. The question is, will the high-strung young female allow Jamie to inspect her new pups?
I scanned Shamook's face for any trace of distress, but she just looked at me curiously. She would surely have attacked anyone else, but we had developed a strong trust since she was a pup herself. When she left the den, it seemed a sign that I was permitted entrance, which really touched me. There was only one way to find out if I understood her signals. Shamook just watched me, as if she was proud to show off what she had accomplished. There was no detectable odor. Shamook knew how to conceal the pups from predators by keeping a tidy den. I could make out three little heads.
Mom's waiting outside for you. Yeah, so cute. Look at you. Yeah, you're tiny.
The pups almost looked like little bear cubs. They were endearing and inquisitive, like most young and innocent animals. They sniffed the air and chirped at me. Maybe they thought I was there to feed them. While we were filming in Alaska, Gordon told us many stories of the wolves he was studying in Denali that mirrored the behavior of the wolves of the Sawtooth pack. He was one of the first to write about the devotion that wolves have for one another. He observed that courting wolves snuggled while walking and lying together. He also noted that wolf pairs maintained this physical closeness well outside of mating season. Gordon's most moving observation of the devotion between a pair of wolves came at the moment when their bond was shattered. The male and female were the alphas of the Tolklot pack that Gordon had studied in Alaska. They paired in 2002 and together endured the loss of their first pups to a marauding bear. But by the end of 2004, they had successfully raised 2 litters. Most of the Tolklot's territory fell within the huge protected area of Denali, but some of it fell outside the park boundaries. The hatred of wolves burns deep in many parts of Alaska, and some of the most anti-wolf hunters run legal trap lines just outside the borders of the park. Wolves, unable to detect whether they're inside the park or out, run a gauntlet of death the moment they cross the invisible boundary. It was a month before mating season when one of these leg hold traps, just outside Denali, ensnared the young alpha female. Now, leg hold traps don't kill outright. They hold the wolf in place to starve. If the wolf's lucky, the trapper will appear within a few days and finish the job. The Tolklot female languished in the trap for 2 weeks before she was finally shot. During her entire ordeal, her mate stayed by her side. He quite possibly brought food to her, desperate to help her, but in the end, unable to keep her alive. When at last she was killed, he and their yearlings ran back into the park. The loyalty he displayed during that ordeal would have told us enough, but his behavior over the next few weeks would prove to be even more heartbreaking. When he and his offspring left the trap site, they returned to the den where the pups had been born. There, the male dug through snow and cleared out the den, removing dead leaves and loose soil, preparing it for a new litter that he would never father. The next day, he traveled 14 miles back to the spot where his mate had been trapped, moving at such a fast pace that his pack often struggled to keep up with him. Gordon wrote that he searched for her with such intensity it was almost obsessive. He probably didn't see his mate die. When the trapper appeared, fear likely overwhelmed his senses and he fled into the forest. Perhaps he heard the gunshot and understood what it meant, but perhaps not. Most likely, all he really understood was that his mate was in trouble, and then she was gone. Did he prepare the den and search for her, believing she was still alive? Or did he do these things because he was so upset to the point of madness, unable to accept what he knew? When you look at wolves as only vermin, or identification numbers, nothing can explain this behavior. Only through the lens of our own human understanding does it become clear. Powerless to help her as she died, what else would he be feeling? The toe-clock pair was as closely bonded as any human couple. When he lost her, his grief was equally as pure and terribly sharp. When Gordon left him, he was standing on a high plateau, howling it over and over again in the direction of the trap site.
One cannot observe a pack of wolves without seeing some reflection of ourselves. The life of a wolf can be complicated. An individual wolf has bonds to his or her pack, but may also harbor a strong personal drive to explore. The tug-of-war between individual ambition and family has a layer of drama that occasionally plays out in a Shakespearean-style narrative. It's what makes watching wolves endlessly fascinating and personally compelling. Living with wolves gave us not only the rare opportunity to share in their private lives, it also gave us a better understanding of our own human nature. Their lives and behaviors mirrored our own. So concerned with family, so curious, so playful, and so compassionate. In many ways, they were very much like us. Rick McIntyre, park ranger, biologist, author, and friend, has come to know every wolf in Yellowstone since reintroduction. Rick once said, certain wolves I've come to know, they're better at being wolves than I have been at being a person. We can't count the number of times we experienced that same feeling while watching the Sawtooth pack. And it's with that spirit that we have written our book, The Wisdom of Wolves. It's not our intention to humanize wolves, but rather to celebrate their very wolf-like qualities through the lens of our own humanity. As it happens, many of the qualities that make a wolf successful at being a wolf also represents the very best in human nature. In our book, we have gathered favorite memories from our years with the Sawtooth pack, along with other stories of other wolves that we have come to know. There are stories of benevolent leaders and faithful lieutenants, fierce mothers, nurturing fathers, and devoted siblings. There are accounts of courageous hunters and fearless explorers. There are wolves that evolved into being big puppy sitters, and others best described as comedians. Wherever there are wolves, there are stories as inspiring as any human drama. We owe it to the wolves to let them live their stories without persecution and without judgment. We owe it to ourselves to watch, marvel, and reflect. Our lives are richer when we listen to what the wolves have to teach us. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I think we have time to answer some questions. So if anybody has any questions. Why does there have to be an omega? Why does there have to be a kid on the playground that's always picked on? You know, it's the way the family structure works. You always have a top and a bottom, and really, truly, for as tough as the omega's life appears, he or she really is a member of the pack that is so important. And omega is not a wolf that will be a disperser, that will trek out on their own. They really are part of the glue that holds the family together. They really are the instigators of play and keeping things light. But things just do tend to get out of hand for him. You know, we were fortunate with the Sawtooth pack, and I think we've heard stories of this happening in other packs as well. At the end of our project, we moved the wolves up to the Nez Perce Reservation in northern Idaho, and shortly after that, Lakota was allowed to retire and wasn't the omega any longer. But the really cool thing is that when another wolf was sort of chosen to be the Omega, Lakota never picked on him. So he knew. So that's a great lesson.
They're carnivores. Why didn't they see him as meat? Why did they, you know?
They're carnivores. Why don't they see us as meat? Well, we're not their natural prey. Wolves are very afraid of humans, and most carnivores go after very particular. They see us as other predators, and generally predators do not eat other predators. They will attack other predators if there's competition, if they're moving through territory, but predators don't kill predators to eat them. So
Do you think there's like a social evolution
yeah.
that's happened during this whole time?
Probably.
I mean, the history.
Yeah, I mean, it's why, it's thought that early humans and wolves always lived in close proximity to each other. We benefited from each other's hunting prowess. Human beings, it's thought, would follow wolf packs on a hunt. And then when they would bring down a mammoth or whatever they were killing, humans would come in and help finish the job. And then at the same time, wolves, if humans were out on a hunt, would follow behind and help sort of corral the animals that they were hunting. So it was a very cooperative, symbiotic relationship.
They don't go after cattle and sheep normally. It's when they are desperate and they'll turn on them. In the beginning of our project, we started with a male and a female wolf. And it just didn't work out. You just can't select alphas. So we shipped them back to where they came from. But it was interesting because the female had lived on all sorts of different types of food. Chicken, deer, beavers, beef, all this, venison. But the male didn't. He had only been fed, and he came from a captive pack. Elk and deer, and that was all. So Pierre Piva, who has a ranch over here that used to allow us to go through his property to get to wolf camp, had a steer that died. And so we took that steer, put it on a snowmobile sled, and dragged it up and carried it in and gave it to the pack. But the male wouldn't feed on it. And he taught the puppies not to feed on it. But the female went in and finished it off. It's an interesting, We've heard from many ranchers that they've watched their cattle and sheep, or cattle and calves, and a wolf will wander through the pack and see a deer and kill the deer, but not bother the cattle.
Are there still, and if there are, how many packs and wolves still in the area, in Sawtooth as well as just kind of White Cloud in this area?
Well, Garrett can give us the best number on that.
Well, so State of Idaho has been monitoring for about 4 years now. So the numbers are really vague. There's statewide estimates between 500 and 1,000 wolves throughout the state. This is an area of pretty good concentration, generally, historically, throughout when they were monitoring, and it appears to still be that way to some degree. It's the best I can do. Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about when the pack's alpha here, one of them was shot? What happens with the pack? Is it just first multiplication? The misinformation about the
Yeah, that's a very good question. The question is to speak about what happens when you kill wolves, especially the alphas. What happens to the pack? And we're actually doing research in several national parks. They've come together to do the same research in Yellowstone, Denali, Yukon Charlie. I'm missing Grand Teton. Am I missing one? Or have one?
You said you could check.
Yeah. To do a study to see what happens when wolves leave the park and they're killed, and what happens to the family dynamic. And it really it's really quite tragic, because you're not only losing the knowledge of the pack, which really is the glue that holds that family together, But then you can be left with youngsters that don't know how to take care of themselves. And that's when you get into trouble. That's when you may have wolves going after sheep or cattle because they're young, they haven't been taught properly, and they're stuck. They need something easy. So killing wolves actually perpetuates the problem. It can also totally disintegrate a pack. You can have wolves, older wolves that really hold it together, but once they're gone, you don't have that leadership, and they can break up into smaller groups, and then you end up with smaller packs that again can't take care of themselves as efficiently, and then you can run into problems. So by keeping packs whole and healthy, it really is a benefit to the ranching community and also to hunters. You don't have little packs trying to go after several groups.
Just add a little bit to that. So the preliminary results of some of this research is suggesting that the alpha female is the most important member of the pack in terms of continuing the cohesion of the pack. When she is shot or lost through any kind of mortality, but in this case we're studying human-caused mortality, that it has the greatest potential to lead to the dissolving of the pack itself. Also, they find, so that's the breeder, right, the alpha female, one of the two breeders. We're finding that when there are no pups in the following year, so quite often these hunts result in the pack not reproducing, and then in the following spring sometimes the pack falls apart, and they're finding that the pups are kind of the glue of the pack.
Yeah, and some of the research, Kira Cassidy, who's one of the biologists doing research in Yellowstone on this project, her big study is on elder wolves and how important are older members to a family. And we really can learn a lot as human beings because we tend to discard our older population. But she's found that a smaller pack with older wolves will be more successful than, let's say, a larger, younger pack with no elders. Because the elders have had the experience, they may have, done business with that rival pack, they know whether they need to get into a fight or not get into a fight, know where they need to go find the prey, cross rivers. It's really integral in the health of a wolf pack.
Another story, Doug Smith, the top biologist from Yellowstone, was just over here for our board meeting, and he spoke at the library in Ketchum, and he's always told us this, watch these packs, and the alpha male will get up and stretch and get ready to go off on a hunt, and all the other wolves will look at him and don't do anything. But the alpha female gets up and stretches. All the other wolves get up. I guess we're doing something.
How did the Sawtooth pack do once they moved to the post-reservation?
How did the Sawtooth pack do when it moved to the reservation? They did quite well. What you have to realize is that it was a captive pack, so they could not be set free. They lost the one thing they needed to survive in the wild more than anything, which was a fear of humans. So we built a similar enclosure on Nez Perce tribal lands for them to live out their lives. And in talking to the tribe, we made the decision to do tubal ligations on the females so that they would continue their breeding behavior but not continue to reproduce, because it was a finite piece of land and you would eventually have dispersers and there'd be no place for them to go. And really our hope was, by the time there was no more Sawtooth pack, there would be a better understanding of wolves and we wouldn't have to have captive packs. So they did have a good life. The oldest wolf lived to be, what is it, 17. Yeah, so that, which is tremendous.
In Yellowstone, a wolf lives to 3 to 5 years.
It's a hard life.
This, other pack animals that are in packs, usually they push out the competition. The alpha push out other, the lone wolf kind of deal with a male wolf who's competitive with the, it may not exist in the wolf world, but in the cat world, it certainly exists. They get pushed out of the pack, they go try to start their own packs. Wolves evidently don't
Okay, the question is about are wolves pushed out of their packs? Is it similar to cats? Wolves do have dispersers, and you'll have these lone wolves, and it's generally a short period of time where you have a wolf, whether it's male or female, that wants to be an alpha, but they can't because there's already a strong alpha. And so that's the wolf that chooses to strike out on its own and look for another wolf of the opposite sex to then start their own family. And it's usually a very temporary situation because it's very difficult for wolves to survive on their own, to bring down the prey they need to survive. It's very different than big cats, because big cats, yes, once the males, especially males mature, they're kicked out, or slightly before they mature. And another interesting thing is that when a lion will take over another lion's pride, due to territorial fight, that lion will kill the offspring. A wolf will not. They love pups. They take those pups in, they become part of the family, which is a really cool thing. Because wolves know they need as many members as possible to be strong and survive, to guard their territory, to go out on the hunt. So they're very social, and very different.
Maybe one more question. Have all the wolves in the Sawtooth pack, as young wolves, been in contact with people?
Yeah, have all the wolves of the Sawtooth pack been in contact with people? Yes, they had to be. What we had, especially the pups born to the litter, we didn't want to mess with them. We really thought we could, in our dreams, we would have loved to have just let them be. But in talking to a lot of behavioralists that had studied captive packs, you really had to take those pups and bond with them yourself. So we took them just before they were opening their eyes, so they would bond with us before we put them back into the pack. Because what you would end up with is a captive situation where the adults may not be afraid of us because they're comfortable with us, but they would still teach their pups to stay away and be afraid. And we couldn't have that in a captive situation. So that was part of the trade-off, but we knew we were going to